touchdown, time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a Bird Gang Nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, really time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in. What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, joined as always by my guy Brandon, and it is Philly the podcast. So we are on to pick number 18. So it is not about us again. It is about the Miami Dolphins. So I went out and got one of the best covering Miami Dolphins. We got Alain Poupart from Sports Illustrated and AllDolphins. How you doing, man? How's it going today?
It's going great.
Good. It's glad to have you on. So,
as you see, my young daughter here.
Yeah, we got an extra cameo. We got a whole extra cameo. Didn't even have to pay for it. I love it. But no, so before we get into any draft talk or any football talk, let them know where they can find your articles, where they can find you, and just what you do.
Oh, I cover the Miami Dolphins all day long, nonstop, especially on day when a lot of things break, like during the free agency period. And you can find all my work at alldolphins.com. I'm on Twitter at Poupart NFL. Like I said, a whole bunch of stuff, and it's nonstop.
Definitely. Now, let's get into what the people want. So let's talk a little bit about the Fins season. I mean, it's been kind of up and down. Obviously, you have two first-round picks, but it was a good season and a bad season. Can you tell me, like, kind of your feels about it, you know, now that we're looking back at it overall? How did you feel about last season?
No, it was a very good season. If you think back to 2 years, gutted the roster, got rid of a lot of high salary cap guys, got a little along with the cap space, and then last offseason went nuts in free agency, signed 11 unrestricted free agents. And in the second year under Brian Flores, they went from 5-11 to 10-6. We're in a position to clinch a playoff spot heading into the regular season finale at Buffalo, and they got smoked. Which I don't want to say was good in a sense because you always want to make the playoffs, but it kind of opened everybody's eyes as to, yeah, the team was much improved, but there's still work left to be done.
All right. How does it feel to, like, now that the Bills are like the ones that are on top of the East, and you guys are pretty much up and coming, to be honest, like the moves that Brian Flores has made between last season and building up like the rookie quarterback, and you guys are making slight moves right now. And then obviously the 2 first-round picks is huge. How does it feel to like have it kind of tables turn in a sense in that division?
Well, it's just a nice change. It's not New England, Patriots, New England, Patriots. It's got old. I mean, as a football fan, in addition to being a writer, it's like I want to see some new teams every once in a while at the same time tipping your hat and respecting what they've done. But now it's Buffalo that the rest of the AFC East has to worry about, I would think, for the next few years, unless for some reason Josh Allen takes a step back, which would be unexpected. But then again, how many expected him to take the step forward that he took in 2020? So. But Buffalo keeps making a lot of good moves. I mean, already in free agency this year, what they've done is they've kept their guys. I mean, like Matt Milano's a big piece of that defense, and you thought he might be gone in free agency, and no, he chose to stay. Same with Darrell Williams at tackle and John Feliciano at guard. So that's the team I think the Dolphins are going to have to worry about for the next couple of years. And who knows if the Patriots are going to bounce back. I mean, was last year an aberration at 7-9, just the post-Tom Brady hangover, and then they turn it back around. I wouldn't put it past them. The Jets have a bit of a ways to go, so but they got a new coach. They also have a ton of draft capital, so it's not impossible for them to also make a quick move, and maybe you'd wind up with having 4 good teams in the division as opposed to having 1 and then everybody else chasing.
Definitely. Yeah. And we're both from, New England, a little backstory. We're both from Connecticut. So seeing a little bit of parity in, that AFC East is definitely not something we're opposed to. So I want to talk about quarterback a little bit. You brought up Tom Brady, but, in Miami, you guys had Fitzpatrick. Obviously, he's gone now. Tua, when that happened,
I thought Tua was going to get the reins. I thought, okay, now it's Tua's job. But then you guys go and get Jacoby Brissett. I just kind of want to know from your perspective, what is the outlook for Tua when it comes to the Dolphins? Is he that guy?
Well, it's not Jacoby Brissett who's going to take the job from him. That I can tell you. And no offense to Jacoby Brissett. It's going to be Tua's job unless Houston says, okay, we give up. Deshaun doesn't want to play for us. We'll go ahead and trade him, at which point I would certainly expect the Dolphins to get on the phone and say, okay, it's a good take. And then if you can swing the deal, then Deshaun Watson will be the Dolphins quarterback. But I probably don't see much of a scenario where it's not either Tua or Watson. It has been suggested, and it makes perfect sense that the Dolphins evaluate every quarterback in this year's draft also. If they come to the realization that one of them is much better than Tua as a prospect, what do you do then? Do you just get stubborn and say, no, we picked Tua fifth last year, we have to stay with him? Or do we go with the guy? I'm not sure there is that guy out there other than Trevor Lawrence, and he ain't getting past one. So that's not happening. I like Zach Wilson, but I haven't studied him in depth. What I've seen of him is he looks really impressive. But again, to me, it would take a whole lot to get away from Tua unless it's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And I just want to piggyback on that real quick before you go, Brandon. I just want to ask you, what do you think you're losing in Tua? I mean, not Tua, excuse me, and Fitzpatrick. Were you kind of upset that you lost that, veteran presence, or were you kind of okay with him leaving?
Well, I was okay leaving in the sense that it was a foregone conclusion. There was no way he was coming back. Because you talk to him, you see every single one of his media sessions when you talk to him about his future is, I love being out there, I love competing. Well, guess what? You're not being out there if you're in Miami. So from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, I like the guy. He was the best quarterback on that team last season. It wasn't Tua, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick. But they had a plan in place where they were going to get Tua in there, and that's what they did. And for the long-term health of the franchise in terms of developing Tua and seeing what you have, it made perfect sense. If you were talking about strictly about getting wins in 2020, Fitzpatrick was the guy. But so no, I'm not. I'm upset in the sense that I like Fitzpatrick as a guy. I think he's a good quarterback, but there was no way. Zero chance he was coming back.
Right. And so before we move on from the quarterbacks, what are your thoughts on Tua? Do you believe that he can be the guy to lead Miami to like the playoffs? Or are you like low-key praying that you guys get a Deshaun Watson?
I'm not low-key praying it. If they can get Deshaun Watson, then yeah, there's no low-key. There's no low-keying anything. Because Deshaun Watson is legit top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and he's 25 years old. Tua may become a good quarterback. I don't know. I don't think it's a guarantee in any way, shape, or form. I didn't see a ton last year that made me think, wow, this guy's got it. Like, for example, I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to use Justin Herbert as a comparison because Herbert was crazy good. And, I mean, holy smokes. But even Joe Burrow, whose numbers weren't very good, but if you watch Joe Burrow play, there were several instances where you're like, okay, yeah, that's the guy right there. And it's funny because when you hear all the talk about teams that could be interested in Deshaun Watson, you see some tweets where from like longtime media observers will say maybe 25 teams. Well, you never see the Bengals on that list. Why? Because Burrow's got it. Burrow's got it. Burrow's going to be a stud. Can't say that about Tua. I'm not nearly obnoxious or arrogant enough to say I know for a fact he'll never pan out, but I don't think it's up in the air. And so again, to go back to Watson, if you can get a sure thing like Watson, you absolutely do it.
So let me ask you this then. Going forward, like Brandon said earlier, you guys have buttload of draft picks. You got the money in free agency and everything. Who do you think this team is right now? Are you guys a rebuilding team, or do you think this is a team that can realistically compete for a championship pretty soon?
They're not competing for a championship without much, much better play from the quarterback position, whether that's Tua making a huge jump in his second year or whether that's the Dolphins winding up with Deshaun Watson. So from that standpoint, Look, when Brian Flores was hired in 2019, the vision that they had with him and Chris Greer, the GM, was we want to build a team that's going to compete year in and year out, not this one thing where you make the playoffs once every 5 years, whatever, and then you step back and all you're doing every offseason is filling holes because your roster is flawed. They want to build like a solid foundation. They're not there yet. So I would say, yeah, they're still in rebuilding mode, except it's a lot farther along than it used to be.
All right. And to kind of tie it in with the Eagles, we know that Jordan Howard left the Eagles. He went to Miami, didn't do a thing, and then came back to Philly. Just Jordan Howard just not that great, or was Miami really trying to focus in on the quarterbacks and maybe Gaskin, and they didn't really care too much about the running back position?
No, that's not what happened. I mean, Jordan Howard was good with the Eagles. He was good with the Bears. Always at least 4 yards per attempt. Very solid. Comes to Miami, you figure he'll be that kind of guy. He's not a star, but he's a very solid NFL running back. I'm sorry?
I drafted him in fantasy football thinking he was going to do something.
Well, the opener is at New England. They start off, they give him the ball a couple of times, and it's like -1 yard, no gain, -2, 1 yard. And all of a sudden, he's out of the game. He finishes the game with like 8 carries for 5 yards or something. And then Myles Gaskin produces in different formations, more in like more passing situations. And then they kind of get away from Jordan Howard, and Myles Gaskin gets a roll. Then Myles Gaskin gets hurt or wound up on COVID, one of the two. So Jordan Howard gets another shot. Again, same deal. So the Dolphins were like, okay, well, this is obviously not working out. And they did him a solid by then he became a healthy scratch. So it's like at that point, let him go. But the question now is, why did it go so horribly wrong when Jordan Howard's not a bad back? Maybe he was just a horrible fit for the offense they were running. And if that's the case, you wonder why that wasn't studied extensively before they signed him. But that was a weird one.
Yeah, to pat myself on the back, I did have Myles Gaskins on my franchise team. He was and I had him on like the stash, so I was proud of that. But that was really weird because we did end up getting a 6th-round pick for Jordan Howard. I don't think I can ever really think of a time that a team got a compensatory pick for a player that's still on your roster. Kind of weird, but we'll switch gears a little bit to the draft now. Everybody goes into the draft. Obviously, actually, I want to ask you this. Me and you talked a little bit in the DMs about the previous pick, number 3. Now, obviously, you're making the pick number 18. You weren't on the side. Shout out to Dougley Do Wrong. He did a great job. Obviously, it was earlier before. You wouldn't have made that pick. We'll say that. Who would you have taken at number 3?
Can you who were the first 2 picks? Is it Lawrence and Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Lawrence and Wilson. And I don't have the ability to trade back.
No.
In theory, you could say you prefer to, but for this
because I also think if they don't wind up using that pick in a trade for Deshaun Watson, that's what I would highly suspect the Dolphins will try to do unless they get no offers, is to trade back, pick up another premium pick, and move into, let's say, I don't know, the 8, 9, 10 spot, maybe even as far as down as 12 to Frisco. If they stay put at 3 after Lawrence and Zach Wilson, here's the one name I would throw. If it's me picking, I would go with Kyle Pitts, and I would tell you why. I would tell you because I don't care that they have Mike Gesicki on the roster. I understand that, and you guys both from Philly obviously know well from his days at Penn State. He is a developing, emerging tight end who is probably near the top of that second tier of tight ends after the Kittles, Kelce's, and Wallers of the world. But Kyle Pitts is different. I mean, Kyle Pitts is like borderline wide receiver at 6'6", 250, who is a mismatch nightmare. And this notion that you can't have 2 stud receiving tight ends. Oh, by the way, New England just signed Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith in free agency. So, yeah, it can be done. And guess who was in New England when the Patriots were killing defenses, or bad choice of words, when they were like abusing defenses with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez? Brian Flores was on that coaching staff. So he's seen what that can do. So, and I've heard the names, the projections you hear. of Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, maybe Devontae Smith. To me, there's not enough of a difference between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 6 to justify taking a wide receiver 3. And I don't think there's one of those who's Calvin Johnson, who's like Hall of Fame. And Kyle Pitts, to me, is that kind of guy. And I had somebody on Twitter tell me, you can't draft a tight end 3rd overall, to which I responded, well, after he makes Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl, you won't care where they picked him. So that's who I would go with.
Interesting.
That's very true.
Man, and we have Eagle fans arguing because we don't even know if we could take a tight end at 6, let alone 3.
If he's there at 6 and the Eagles don't take him, that's criminal negligence. It's horrible.
So let me ask you this: what going into the draft night, going into the draft in general, what do you think is the goal for this team? You know, is it to get a bunch of starters, or is it to? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the goal for everybody. But what do you think is the real mentality of this team? The real the real mentality, I guess, is the best way I could put it.
Well, what I would tell you is that since they're still in a rebuilding mode, what to me was telling is that last year, a lot of the picks they made were guys. And even starting with Tua, were guys who many scouts felt might need a little bit of time to reach their full potential, but had very high ceilings. I'm talking about Tua because he was coming off the hip issue. I'm talking about Austin Jackson, their pick, who incidentally also was 18 like this year. Especially more so their 3rd first-round pick, who was Noah Benagany, the cornerback from Auburn. Even Robert Hunt, their 2nd of their 2 second-round picks, was seen as a developmental guy. So if I'm going in with the idea that they're still kind of in rebuilding mode, then I would tell you that they would go for guys with the highest ceiling as opposed to maybe guys who are more pro-ready.
Right. And I know you just mentioned how if you had the ability to trade back at 3, with your pick, would you still want to trade back this far? Like, what is this pick on 18, I believe? Yeah. Would you want to trade back if someone, or if there was someone premium a couple picks ahead, would you want to trade forward at this point?
Would have to be somebody that you really want. Yeah, I'm not opposed to trading forward for the right price, but if you're in building mode, giving up premium picks to move up is not necessarily a great business model. So it would have to be somebody very special that they absolutely have to have, and for a reasonable pick.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the Eagles and the Dolphins are kind of in that same mode where it's like, we probably shouldn't be looking at giving up picks at all. You know, you guys had a better season than us, but, you know, rebuilding is rebuilding, and picks are probably gold in rebuild. So one last question I want to ask you before we get to the actual pick. Everybody has their dream scenario. Everybody has how they want it to go, how they want it to play out. But I want to ask you, is there that one thing that could happen at either 3 or number 18 that you would just go crazy?
You know exactly what I'm going to say. I'll tell you what I'm going to say. 3 and 18 to the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. That would be my dream scenario. So my nightmare scenario, man, I'm not going to make friends with this. Nightmare is too strong a word. Let's put a scenario I wouldn't necessarily be crazy with. I like that phrasing better. Like, some Dolphin fans are pushing for like Devontae Smith at 3 and Najee Harris at 18. And a lot of the reasons you hear, well, because they have this connection with Tua. Well, I mean, who cares? I mean, they played with him at Alabama. Who cares? If they're going to go wide receiver at 3, go Jamar Chase. And guess what? Jamar meet Tua, Tua meet Jamar, and you're going to become buddies. I mean, and even beyond the fact that they played together, not a fan of taking a running back at 18. The data is out there that it's just not good value. I would rather hold off. They have 36 and 50 in the second round. Personally, I'm not even sure I like Najee Harris the most at running back. I think I like Javonte Williams out of North Carolina even more. Can you get another Javonte Williams at 36? I'd be okay with that. That's assuming even the Dolphins are going to take a running back, because I'm starting to think they may be going by running back by committee approach and do what they did last year when They had a screaming need for a running back. They signed Jordan Howard in free agency, and they traded a 5th-round pick for Matt Breida. And in the meantime, watched 6 running backs get drafted in the first 2 rounds, pretty much all of whom look pretty damn good as rookies. Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, A.J. Dillon, C.H., J.K. Dobbins, and DeAndre Swift. Dolphins could have had any of those, and they chose not to go that route. So who's to say they don't do that again?
I forgot you guys have Matt Breida. Matt Breida is good. Well, at least he wasn't.
Matt Breida was not good last year. That's the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say at least he wasn't San Fran.
He was good in San Fran. He was a great piece, great complimentary back, and he did nothing in Miami. They didn't use him. He had his best game was in the game against New England, when the second game in December when they rushed for like 250 yards. He had like 85, ran really well, and the next week either he was inactive or didn't touch the ball. It's like, okay, what happened? So now he's an unrestricted free agent, and if he re-signed with the Dolphins, I'd be shocked.
And just a real quick before the draft pick, just because we were talking running backs, I know that you guys just picked up Malcolm Brown from the Rams. Do you think that's a decent running back to fit your scheme, or do you feel like this might be another waste right here because he seems more of like a power back?
But they didn't have a power back. That's the thing. And this is why, if you notice, I threw out that maybe the Dolphins won't take a running back high, because again, they had your friend Myles Gaskin, who's coming off a good year. He's not Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey, but he had a good year and did a good job last year. Savon Ahmed, the rookie free agent from Washington, showed flashes. And now you had Malcolm Brown, who's the physical back to go along with the 2 smaller scat backs. So I like the pickup in terms of him bringing a different skill set than what they have. So with those 3 guys, are they going to go out and then draft Harris or Williams or Travis Etienne? And if this is why I'm thinking wouldn't be shocked. Well, I wouldn't be shocked if they skipped the running back in the draft again.
Yeah,
but I do like to answer your original question. I do like the pickup of Brown. He's a good, solid complementary back and adds a dimension that they didn't have in the running back room.
Yeah, my roommate is a diehard Dolphins fan, so I have love for you guys. I hope nothing but the best for you guys. And I live in Tampa now, so I might be coming down for a couple games. So let's get to the pick. Let's get to what the people want. Obviously, we all know, the fans want what they want. The GM's going to do what he's going to do, but it's on you now. So at number 18, who would you be picking for the Miami Dolphins and why?
Well, the pick based on the players who have been selected before the pick I made was Xavier Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa. Why? Because the Dolphins need a big-time playmaker for that defense in the front 7. They have the 2 studs at cornerback and Byron Jones, who played a lot better than his metrics showed last year. And then they have Xavier Howard, who was a 3rd in the voting for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. What they don't have is a difference-making linebacker. They have some depth there. Jerome Baker had a very, very good year, but they don't have anybody who's like a game wrecker, and Xavier Collins has the skill set to be that kind of guy. You're looking at a guy who's, 6'5", 240 and runs like crazy. I mean, when you hear – I've heard the comparisons of him to Brian Urlacher. That works for me. And he's not necessarily like a big blitzer type of guy, but he's a guy who can play out in space. The Dolphins let go of Kyle Van Noy in free agency already before the start of free agency, I should say. They traded Shaq Lawson, who was an edge defender. They traded him to Houston. Elandon Roberts, who was another one of their linebackers, tore an ACL at the end of last year, and he's an unrestricted free agent. So there's clearly a need for a linebacker. More than anything else, they need playmakers in the front 7, and this is where Collins comes in. And beyond the need, this also was a BPA pick, best player available. At that time, he clearly fit that bill as the best player available.
Definitely. Yeah, I love Xavier Collins. I mean, a lot of people are going crazy over the guy from Notre Dame. I'm not even going to try and say his full name. But the linebacker from Notre Dame.
Make it simple.
There we go. Yeah, we'll go with that. So a lot of people are going crazy over him. He's very athletic, but Xavier Collins used to be a quarterback, I think, in high school. So he's nothing but athleticism. Some people are scared off by the Tulsa, but I mean, grow up. It's 2020. We've seen so many small school players. You know, one of his running mates, Jabril Cox, played most of his career at North Dakota State University. So, you know, we're going to see a lot of these athletic guys that are coming in and just, I think Xavier Collins is probably the most ready out of the people that are still left. Maybe Micah Parsons. But I love Xavier Collins. What do you think, Brandon?
No, I think there's a point there where you do have like a Jerome Baker, but you do need that other guy next to him to play well. And you building up that front seven will only benefit your Xavier Howards, your Byron Jones, the whole secondary. And linebackers are premium. I mean, like, look at Tampa Bay. Their linebackers are beast, and we saw what they did in the Super Bowl. And so those athletic linebackers are definitely key. And, I mean, if the Eagles go with, like, a Michael Parsons, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'd be pretty excited because we are depleted at linebacker, and having someone athletic like that would be great. But I think that's a great pick for the Dolphins at that spot.
No, and to your point about, he played at Tulsa. Well, if we go back to Urlacher played at the University of New Mexico, so that's not exactly a football factory. So you're a good player, And
right.
Doesn't matter where you play.
The NFL will find you. If you have talent, the NFL will find you.
Right.
But Alan, thank you so much for coming on here, spitting some facts about the Miami Dolphins. It was a lot of fun, man. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Go Expos. Major League Baseball, do the right thing, bring a team back to Montreal. Let's do it right this time. Don't strap them financially. Let them compete as they were in 1994 when they would have won the World Series if not for that player strike.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, all right. That's going to be the clip. That's But hey, I appreciate it so much, man. And other than that, man, I think we're going to get out of here. Xavier Collins to the Miami Dolphins. It's a beautiful thing. So we're going to have number 19 coming tomorrow. Hope you guys are ready for that. But other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly. And we are out here. Peace.
Everywhere. This is for you.
Fly Eagles flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randolph. Season here, early time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.